I'm Trisha from Living a Vintage Life, and welcome to our very first episode of Caftans and Cocktails, where we are going to talk about everything vintage, specifically 50s and 60s, mid-century, because that's what I collect. I've been collecting for about 20 years, and I started reselling about 2 years ago. I sell primarily on Etsy and also on eBay. And so I wanted to give you a little look inside my collection, and also we're going to talk about a lot of different things for vintage resellers, cleaning vintage items, vintage clothing. We're going to do some haul videos, some sourcing videos. We're going to talk about sourcing from estate sales. We're going to tour my paint by number gallery, all sorts of fun things this year. So we have a lot of great things planned, and I wanted to start the season off with a tour of our house for Christmas. I've collected vintage Christmas for about 20 years. I got my first aluminum tree about 15 years ago. I became obsessed with it because I remembered my grandmother's tree and I wanted to replicate everything from my childhood. So I started with the aluminum tree and then went on to nativity sets and anything I could remember growing up with. And it's kind of turned into a forest. So we're gonna go through a little bit of history of the different items and take a look at my collection, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, like I said, I got my very first aluminum tree about 15 years ago. I found it in an antique mall with a color wheel in California. It's really hard to find them in the wild. And so, but I had a lot more luck once we moved up to Washington about 2 years ago. For some reason, I seem to find a lot of them up here. This is my biggest one. And like I said, now all my trees come from estate sales. So keep an eye out. Look in the background pictures. You know, sometimes they're hidden. They're usually in a cardboard box, but you can definitely find them. I found about 7 this year, and I actually have more trees than I have space. So a little bit about the aluminum Christmas tree. The main brand that you're going to see, the first company ever to do it, is the Aluminum Specialty Company. And back in the late 50s, their sale manager, he was in Chicago, and he saw this huge metal tree in a window of a shop. And he thought it was the coolest thing ever, but it was like big and bulky and expensive. So what he did, he took the idea back to his company, and he went ahead and they made a cheaper version. They could sell it for about $25. It was super easy to take apart, and if you've never had an aluminum tree, it's basically a wooden pole with holes poked in it, and you stick the branches in, and you put the poles together on a stand, and it's super easy to take in and out. So there's a few different ones. The main brand you're going to see from that company is Evergreen, and but a lot of other companies got into the market after they did. This one here that you're looking at is a straight branch tree. There is also the other popular brand is the Pom Pom, and those have like a starburst effect on the ends, kind of like an exploding pom pom. Okay, you probably noticed this big cardboard basin at the bottom of my aluminum tree. This is the Bradford Snowmaker, which promised to give you snow during any season. I found this at an estate sale. I was super excited to find it. And what it does is it shoots little styrofoam balls, which are supposed to replicate snow out of the top of your tree. Now, the one thing I didn't really count on was the aluminum tree with the white snow. You really don't get the effect you would with a green, real tree. So it's these little styrofoam balls that go up a tube, and then the tube shoots it out from an angel at the top of the tree. We'll try to shoot it again tonight with the lights on it, so you might, get a better feel for it. But it came in this huge cardboard box. It took about an hour to put together. It was missing a piece, so we kind of had to rig it together at the bottom. And I don't know, it was one of those things I really wanted because it sounded really cool. But actually, once I got it up and going, it was kind of anticlimactic, and for the amount of time it took to put it together, I don't know if it was worth the effort. They also made them in colors. I've never found anything but the silver, unfortunately. If you could find a pink one, that would be absolutely amazing. They also made one that was a fan tree that was for apartments, and it went on the wall. So laid flat and fanned out. I have never found one of those either, but that would be like completely awesome if you can. You know, it had that great atomic look, super popular in the 60s. Everybody loved them. But then kind of toward the mid to later 60s, and I don't know if anyone remembers this, and it took me a while to catch on, but in the Charlie Brown Christmas special, Lucy tells Charlie Brown to go out and get an aluminum Christmas tree, preferably painted pink. Well, Charlie Brown goes out and he gets the little tiny scraggly tree that we all remember, and it kind of showed the whole commercialism of Christmas. And after that, I mean, Charlie Brown isn't really, you know, the reason that aluminum trees started dying out, but after that, they all went downhill, and by the 1970s, it was all about natural trees. The other thing I always look for when I'm outsourcing are the metal tree stands. They're perfect for your aluminum trees. This pom-pom here, I actually was lucky enough to get a revolving tree stand. It also actually plays music, but we have the music turned off as well. The other thing you always want to remember about your aluminum tree is you never, ever, ever want to put lights on it. It's a fire electrical hazard. That's why they invented the color wheel, and that's what gives your tree the pretty lights. What we're going to do is film this video in the dark later on tonight so that you'll be able to really get the effect of the color wheel. Of course, all my trees have vintage shiny bright ornaments on them because that's what you have to have when you have your aluminum Christmas tree. There's also a few different types of color wheels. This one's probably the most common. It's the one I find the most. I like the base on it. Kind of has that atomic look. This one over here I really like. It's with the hairpin legs, and you can see that the color wheel is actually kind of the colors inside the dome cone lid. But I like the atomic feel on that one as well. The one I don't like as much is the one that you see over here by my small tree. Yeah, the one I don't like as much is this style right here. The top sits on a little tiny pin. It's kind of the top of it, almost like picture a nail upside down. It sits on this little tiny metal prong, and it's supposed to spin and cut off the colors. I don't think it puts off as many colors as the other two styles, and the problem is it needs a really, really hot bulb to make it turn, and unfortunately they don't make those kind of bulbs anymore. Everything is so energy efficient that it's hard to find a bulb that will make it turn. So you gotta go walk by and spin it every once in a while. But like I said, I have a couple of those, but you know, not my favorites. So this was something, I have a few things that I just really, really wanted. And one of these things was the cardboard fireplace. We're showing it again tonight, but it actually has a little mini color wheel back there, so it kind of gives off a fake red glow. But I saw this in the picture at an estate sale in the background. It wasn't even listed as being at the estate sale, but I saw the box sticking up, and I was like, there's the cardboard fireplace. I have to get it. For this one, we got there, we slept in the car. I think we got there at midnight. It was in a cabin in the woods somewhere. It was in the middle of nowhere. We got there at midnight. We were not the first ones in line. We were second at midnight, slept in the car, but luckily the person who was ahead of us had no interest in the cardboard fireplace. Of course, it was one of my dream pieces, and I was lucky enough to get it. Pretty minty condition, original instructions. The only bummer about this fireplace, it's not the big one with the big top piece. It's just the base, which, you know, is fine. I was very, very happy with it. These are my pets' houses. They are cardboard houses with the little cellophane windows. You probably remember those from when you were a kid. You put Christmas lights in the back to make them light up. These were based, cardboard houses started back in Germany, and then they kind of came here and went to pretty much every five and dime store there were. You could pick these up anywhere. The hardest thing to find, and you'll see them in mine, even though these were actually in a box set, is that they were so cheap and you could pick them up anywhere, and you put Christmas lights through where most of the cellophane windows in the front get broken out really easily because you just poked the lights through and they went right through the cellophane. So I have a lot more stuff than I have space for. Since we did move into our mid-century home, we had to downsize. As you know, houses built in the 50s weren't as big as modern houses, so I've let a lot of my collection go and boxed up. But this is my big styrofoam church. This was actually a kit that you could put together and make. And this felt banner back here was from my friend Kayla at Hazel Hearts Vintage. She was nice enough to give me that at an estate sale she went to that I didn't go to. Now up at the top is that I put in the windows. That's something I'm going to talk about a little bit. Most people know them as like popcorn displays, popcorn wall hangings, because that's what they you know, kind of look like. But the actual name of those are called glitter plaques. And they were made in the United States by the Cage Company, actually in Connecticut. And they started back in the 1940s. They made plastic envelopes and that you put like cards in and things. So the story goes that back in the 40s, they a salesman left the president of the company the little plastic chips so that he could pick the colors of the envelopes that he wanted for that year. And that his daughter was homesick, and she took all the little plastic chips and she put them in the shape of a chicken. And he thought it was really cute, so he took it and he put it in the oven and baked it, and he made this little chicken. And so he thought, wow, what a great idea we can do with these plastic chips. He took it out to a show, and a 5 and dime store picked them up and ordered 25,000. So basically how they do it is there's all these different molds. You put the chips in, they use like a vibration machine to shake them all down, and then they bake it in the oven. So in their heyday, they had over 200 different designs. So obviously Christmas, Halloween are the most popular, but there are really hard to find random ones out there. They said that they were in every catalog. Girl Scouts had them as incentives. They were everywhere. They couldn't keep up with production. And they figured in about the 50 years that they made them, they made over 20 million of the glitter plaques. So unfortunately, this all ended in 2008, so they had a pretty good run, and they stopped making them then. So if you can find them, I always like to pick them up. I always think they look great in the window, and it's kind of nice with the light shining through and everything like that. Since I do have a lot of Christmas items, one thing I like to look for when I go out now is department store items. This big Season's Greeting was a department store display, and as well as that Santa there, and then that big poster that you saw over by the color wheels and the trees, those were all from department stores. So harder to find, but really cool when you do. I like to find them in the original box because they have the address and where they were, what store they went to, so that's always kind of fun. A couple of things everybody collects, so it's probably not that exciting, but knee huggers, the original Elf on a Shelf. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes and things like that. I have a little bit of Holt Howard, not a lot. Oh, and there's the aluminum tree in the tabletop. They went from 2 feet to 8 feet, so there's one of the tinier ones. I have a few of my elves over here. I like to display them in my glass. I like to keep our house decor as unchanged as possible when I put out my Christmas decorations. So, and then those are the Mercury picks. You guys are probably familiar with those too. And then I was talking about how I started collecting vintage Christmas because I wanted stuff from my childhood. So this right here is my first nativity scene. I remember it from when I was growing up, very, very tiny. And my brother and I setting that up on top of our, big television set that we had back then. And I was lucky enough to find, of course, my mom gave all that stuff away because who would possibly want anything from the 60s or 70s anymore? So I had to go out and find the one to replace it, but luckily enough, everything is out there somewhere, and I was lucky to find that one just like the one I grew up with. Here's a few of my ceramic Christmas trees. I try to find a variety of styles and shapes and sizes. Another thing I've run out of space for, but here they are. This one right here, this was another one of my wish list items that I wanted for a long time. And what this one is, it's a lighter. So it's got your ashtrays right here. Nobody here smokes, but it's still super fun to have. And so they come apart as a ashtrays right there, and then here's the lighter. So I looked for that for a long time and finally was able to get one of those. We can't have vintage Christmas without talking about blow molds. So these are a few of my blow mold collection. Obviously the most collectible and probably the hardest ones to find are...
There you go.
There. See, sometimes when it's vintage, you just got to give it a little kick. So the hardest ones and the most collectible are Empire and Union. And Union actually started the blow mold craze back in the 50s with the pink flamingo. So if you remember the plastic pink flamingo that everybody had on their lawn, and I'm lucky enough to have 2 of the vintage ones out in our front yard, which is like by a giant white plastic poodle. I'm sure the neighbors just love. But the Union started it with the plastic pink flamingo, and it just went on from there. So Empire and Union are the ones to look for. That's also, if Brian scrolls up a little bit, you can see my jeweled Christmas tree. No Kitschy Christmas is complete without the jewelry Christmas tree decor there. So yeah, and I have one more aluminum tree here up on the top of the fireplace because I did run out of floor space for trees. And last but not least, I also collect Christmas corsages. Those are super fun just to kind of put around and display. And they're usually really cheap to find, so you can pick them up pretty easily. And of course, a few more of my Santas. And so I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us and for our very first video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something about vintage Christmas, and I hope you enjoyed seeing my collection. Like I said, we have a lot of things to cover and a lot of plans for this year. One of the things I forgot to mention, we're going to do a kitschy cooking episode where we are going to cook actual recipes from the 50s. Most of them involve Jell-O and fish products. So that should be really interesting as we cook it and try to eat it and see what our grandparents lived on back in the day. And also, there's going to be a lot, we're going to work on some rain lamps, we're going to rewire some things. Anything that you have any questions on about vintage, about reselling vintage, collecting vintage, just leave a comment and let me know, and I'd be happy to answer anything I can. And please follow and like, and so you'll get notifications of any future videos. Thanks so much for joining us.